You scroll through someone else's life and feel a small, poisonous thing tighten in your chest. You hate yourself for it. You keep scrolling. The poison spreads a little further. You tell yourself you're happy for them. You're not. You tell yourself it doesn't matter. It does. And the worst part, the part you can barely admit even to yourself, alone, in the dark, with no one watching, is that you don't just want what they have. You want them to not have it. That's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. Envy isn't sadness that someone else succeeded. Envy is the quiet wish that they hadn't. And here's the costly mistake most people make: they think envy is about other people. It's not. Envy is always about you. It's a signal, a diagnostic flare firing up from somewhere deep in your psyche, telling you that you've handed your sense of worth to strangers and called it normal. Self-respect isn't something you feel. It's something you build through discipline, and envy is what happens when you haven't built it yet. Let me say that again, because it's the whole thing. Envy is what happens when you haven't built your own inner structure of worth, so you constantly measure yourself against the structures other people have built. You become a tenant in someone else's building and wonder why you feel homeless. Most people call this a morning. You wake up, you open your phone, and within 60 seconds you've seen 7 lives better than yours. A stranger's vacation. A colleague's promotion. Someone you went to high school with who apparently now owns a house. And you haven't even brushed your teeth yet. The Stoics would call this a surrender. You haven't lived 1 minute of your own day and you've already handed the territory of your mind to other people. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, not for an audience, not for a book, just to himself, in a tent, on a military campaign, that another person's success is not your failure. He had to remind himself of this. The most powerful man in the world, Emperor of Rome, commander of armies, had to sit down and write himself a note saying, "What someone else has does not touch what I am." Think about that. If the emperor needed the reminder, what does that say about you, scrolling through curated photographs of people you barely know, letting their highlight reel dictate your inner weather? Here's what nobody tells you about envy. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't knock on your door and say, "Hello, I'm envy, I'm here to ruin your day." No. Envy is a master of disguise. It wears masks. The first mask is admiration. You say, "I really admire what they've done." And maybe you do, but notice the undertone. Notice the slight tightness. Notice how the admiration comes with a quiet inventory of everything you haven't done. That's not admiration. That's envy dressed in its Sunday clothes. The second mask is criticism. You find the flaw. You pick at it. They got the promotion, sure, but they probably stepped on someone to get there. They have the nice house, but the marriage is probably falling apart. You don't know this. You're manufacturing it. You're building a case against someone else's life because their life is making you uncomfortable with your own. Criticism is envy with a megaphone. And the third mask, the most insidious one, is indifference. You say you don't care. You say it doesn't bother you. You say you're beyond all that. But you keep looking. You keep checking. You keep measuring. If you were truly indifferent, you wouldn't keep returning to the scene of the crime. Envy festers in a very specific place. It lives in the gap between what you have and what you believe you deserve. If someone has something you never wanted, you don't envy them. You don't envy the billionaire's private jet if you have no interest in flying. You don't envy the marathon runner if you hate running. Envy only ignites when someone gets what you secretly believed should have been yours. The promotion you thought you earned. The relationship you thought you deserved. The recognition you thought you were owed. That gap, between your reality and your sense of entitlement, is where the poison pools. And here's the uncomfortable part. That gap is your creation. You drew those lines. You decided what you deserved. You set up the scoreboard, and then you were crushed when someone else's points went up faster than yours. Epictetus understood this with a clarity that cuts through 2,000 years of human self-deception. He drew a line through reality. On one side, things within your control, your choices, your judgments, your effort, your character. He called this the proheretikon, the sphere of moral choice. On the other side, everything else, other people's opinions, other people's success, the weather, the economy, what someone posted on the internet this morning. And his instruction was simple. Master what's on your side of the line. Let go of what's on the other side. Another person's success falls entirely outside the proheretikon. It has nothing to do with you. It is not your loss. It is not your gain. It is not your business. When you envy someone, you are reaching across that line, grabbing something that was never in your domain, and then suffering because you can't control it. It's like standing in the ocean screaming at the tide. The tide doesn't care. And the tide was never yours to command. But here's where it gets interesting, because envy, for all its poison, is also a signal. It's a diagnostic tool. When envy fires, it's pointing at something. It's pointing at a desire you haven't honestly examined. You envy the person with the thriving business? Maybe what you actually want is autonomy, the feeling of being the author of your own days. You envy the person with the beautiful relationship? Maybe what you want isn't their specific relationship but the experience of being deeply known by someone. You envy the person who seems effortlessly confident? Maybe what you want is to stop being at war with yourself. Envy is a compass. It points toward what you actually want, but it points crooked, through the distorted lens of comparison. Your job is to straighten the compass. To look past the person you're envying and ask, what is the underlying desire? What is the actual need? And then, this is the critical move, ask whether that desire is truly yours, or whether you adopted it because the culture handed it to you, because everyone around you seemed to want it, because you never paused long enough to ask yourself whether it was worth wanting. Most people never do this audit. They feel the envy, they feel bad about the envy, they try to suppress the envy, and then the envy comes back wearing a different mask. The cycle repeats. You still don't feel whole. You still don't feel like you. You still feel like you're running a race you never chose to enter, on a track you didn't build, against opponents you didn't select, for a prize you're not sure you even want. The Stoic approach is different. The Stoic approach says, stop running their race. Run yours. Compete with who you were yesterday. Not with strangers today. There is only one comparison that has any meaning, and it's the one almost no one makes. You, today, versus you, yesterday. Were you more honest? Were you more disciplined? Did you handle the difficult moment better than you handled the last difficult moment? Did you waste less time? Did you speak more truthfully? Did you act more courageously? That's the only scoreboard. Everything else is noise. Everything else is you volunteering to be judged by standards you didn't set, in a game you didn't design, where the rules change every time someone else's life updates. Think about how absurd this is. You are letting strangers, people who don't know your name, who don't know your story, who don't know what you've survived or what you've built or what you've overcome, you are letting strangers set the terms of your self-worth. You wouldn't let a stranger choose what you eat for dinner. You wouldn't let a stranger pick your clothes. But you let strangers determine whether you feel good about your life. Every day. Without a fight. Seneca would say you've surrendered the citadel. He used that image, the citadel, the inner fortress. The part of you that no external force can breach unless you open the gate from the inside. Envy is you opening the gate. Envy is you lowering the drawbridge and saying, "Come on in, tell me how I'm doing." And in they come. The strangers. The algorithms. The curated lives. The highlight reels. And they set up camp in your mind and they start issuing orders and you obey. Now, let's talk about what to actually do. Because understanding envy intellectually is not the same as dismantling it. You need practices. You need concrete behaviors. Not platitudes. Not affirmations whispered into a mirror. Practices. First, the digital fast from comparison. You know exactly which platforms, which accounts, which feeds trigger your envy. You know. You've known for a long time. You keep going back because the envy is addictive. It gives you a hit of righteous indignation, a burst of energy that feels like motivation but is actually just adrenaline laced with resentment. So here's the practice. For 7 days, you cut the triggers. Not forever, 7 days. 7 days of not looking at the accounts that make you feel small. 7 days of not checking the feeds that leave you hollow. 7 days of pulling your attention back from other people's lives and forcing it into your own. And here's what will happen. Around day 3, you'll feel withdrawal. You'll feel the pull. You'll reach for the phone out of habit and there will be a moment, a fork in the road, where you either open the app or you don't. That moment is the whole practice. That moment is where you're building the muscle. Every time you choose not to look, you're strengthening the citadel. Every time you choose not to compare, you're reclaiming a small piece of territory that you had surrendered. By day 7, something will have shifted. Not dramatically. Not like a movie montage. But subtly. You'll notice your mind is quieter. You'll notice you're thinking about your own life more and other people's lives less. You'll notice that the poisonous thing in your chest has loosened. Not disappeared, loosened. That's the beginning. Second practice, the daily audit. At the end of each day, not in the morning, when you're fresh and optimistic and full of plans, but at the end, when the day has tested you, sit down and ask yourself 3 questions. Where did I compare myself to someone else today? What did that comparison actually cost me? And what could I have done with that energy instead? You'll be stunned by what you find. You'll discover that comparison is stealing hours from you. Not minutes, hours. Hours of mental energy spent constructing narratives about other people's lives, narratives that are almost certainly wrong, narratives built from a few photographs and a caption. You're writing fiction about strangers and then getting upset about the plot. The audit makes this visible. And what's visible can be changed. Third practice, the retraining of attention toward your own arena. Marcus Aurelius used a phrase that has survived 2,000 years because it's that precise. He talked about returning to yourself. Not as a retreat, as a homecoming. You've been living in other people's houses. It's time to come home. This means deliberately, consciously, repeatedly directing your attention to your own work. Your own craft. Your own relationships. Your own growth. When you catch yourself drifting into comparison, and you will, because this is a habit years in the making, you catch it and you redirect. Not with self-punishment. Not with guilt. Just with the calm, firm hand of someone who has decided to take their mind back. You redirect. You come home. You come home to the work in front of you. You come home to the person in the mirror. You come home to the life you actually have, which is the only life you can do anything with. Here's something important. The Stoics didn't just understand envy from the inside, they understood it from the outside too. They knew that if you appear too perfect, too successful, too put together, you become a target. Envy creates silent enemies. People who seem to have no faults are dangerous to be around, because they make everyone else feel inadequate. The wise move, and this is something Robert Greene articulated with surgical precision, is to occasionally show your cracks. Admit a flaw. Reveal a struggle. Not as performance, not as false humility, but as honesty. Because honesty disarms envy. When people see that you're human, that you bleed, that you fail and get back up, the gap narrows. They stop comparing their insides to your outsides. And you, in turn, become less of a target. But more importantly, when you're honest about your own struggles, you narrow the gap for yourself too. You stop pretending you're above the fray. You stop performing invulnerability. And in that honesty, something paradoxical happens, you actually become stronger. Not because you've hidden your weaknesses, but because you've stopped being at war with them. Now let me address something directly. There's a particular cruelty to envy in the age we live in. Never before in human history have you been forced to compare yourself to so many people so constantly. Your ancestors compared themselves to maybe 100 people in their entire lives, the people in their village, the people they traded with, the people they married alongside. That was the sample size. Now you compare yourself to millions. Millions of lives, curated, filtered, presented at their most flattering, all available in the palm of your hand, every moment of every day. You are running a psychological experiment on yourself that no human brain was designed for. The comparison circuit in your mind is firing constantly, and it has no off switch, because you keep feeding it. You keep providing it with new material. New lives to measure against. New success stories to feel diminished by. New proof that everyone else is doing better, faster, smarter, more beautifully than you. This is not a character flaw. This is an environmental catastrophe. You are living in a comparison ecosystem that is toxic to your mental health, and you are volunteering for it every day. So the question isn't just how to stop envying. The question is whether you're willing to change the environment. Whether you're willing to make choices that most people won't make. Because most people won't. Most people will keep scrolling. Most people will keep comparing. Most people will keep feeling the poison tighten in their chest and keep telling themselves it doesn't matter. Most people will keep surrendering. You don't have to be most people. That's the Stoic invitation. Not to be special. Not to be superior. Just to be awake. To see the mechanism clearly. To understand that envy is not something that happens to you, it's something you participate in. And if you participate in it, you can stop participating in it. Epictetus said something that lands like a hammer. He said it's not things that upset us, but our judgments about things. Envy is not caused by someone else's success. Envy is caused by your judgment that their success diminishes you. That judgment is yours. You made it. You can unmake it. You can replace it with a different judgment. A truer one. The judgment that another person's life is another person's life. That their path is not your path. That their timeline is not your timeline. That their success, their beauty, their wealth, their relationship, their career, all of it belongs to them. And your life belongs to you. And the only question that matters is what you're doing with what's yours. Here's the reframing. When you see someone succeed and you feel that tightening in your chest, the old poison, the old sting, don't suppress it. Don't pretend it's not there. Don't hate yourself for feeling it. That suppression, that self-hatred, just adds another layer of suffering on top of the envy. Instead, observe it. Watch it. Say to yourself, there it is. There's the old pattern. There's the habit. And then, this is the move, translate it. Translate the envy into information. What is it pointing at? What desire is it revealing? What gap is it illuminating? And then ask the follow-up question that almost no one asks, is that desire actually mine? Did I choose it? Or did I inherit it? Did the culture hand it to me? Did I absorb it from the people around me? Is it a genuine expression of what I want, or is it an infection I caught from living in a world that constantly tells me I should want more, be more, have more? When you do this, when you actually sit with the envy and interrogate it instead of running from it, it loses its power. Not because you've defeated it in some dramatic battle, but because you've seen through it. You've seen that it's a mechanism, a pattern, a reflex. And mechanisms, once seen clearly, become optional. You can choose not to operate them. You can choose to put your energy somewhere else. Into your own work. Your own craft. Your own becoming. This is what it means to compete with who you were yesterday. Not in a motivational poster way. In a real, daily, grinding, unglamorous way. You were impatient yesterday. Can you be more patient today? You were avoidant yesterday. Can you face the thing today? You were dishonest yesterday, even in a small way, even in the way you presented yourself to the world. Can you be more honest today? That's the competition. That's the only competition that doesn't corrode you. Because every other competition ends with you losing eventually. There will always be someone richer. Someone smarter. Someone more attractive. Someone more successful by whatever metric you've chosen. If you compete on those terms, you've already lost. You just don't know it yet. But if you compete with who you were yesterday, if your only metric is your own growth, your own integrity, your own increasing alignment between what you believe and how you act, then the game never ends and you can always win. Not win against others. Win against the version of yourself that was asleep, that was reactive, that surrendered the citadel every morning before breakfast. Let me tell you something about the Stoics. They weren't detached from the world in the way people imagine. They weren't sitting on mountaintops, indifferent to everything, above it all. That's a caricature. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire. Seneca managed vast responsibilities. Epictetus survived slavery and built a school. Zeno, who founded the whole philosophy, was a merchant who lost everything in a shipwreck and then found everything in a different kind of wealth. These were people in the arena. People with skin in the game. People who knew what it felt like to look at someone else's power, someone else's success, someone else's ease, and feel the pull of comparison. They weren't immune to envy. They were trained against it. And the training wasn't theoretical. It was practical. It was daily. It was a way of living, an operating system for the mind, tested not in comfort but in war, exile, loss, betrayal, and the daily grind of being human. They didn't eliminate envy. They redirected it. They turned it inward. Instead of looking at what someone else had and feeling diminished, They looked at what someone else had and asked, what virtue does that represent? What quality did it take to build that? And then they turned that quality into a target for their own cultivation. This is the alchemy. This is the transformation. Envy, left untreated, is poison. Envy, transmuted, becomes fuel. Not fuel for resentment, fuel for growth. You see someone who is calm under pressure. You envy their calm. Good. Now cultivate calm. You see someone who is disciplined with their time. You envy their productivity. Good. Now cultivate discipline. You see someone who is comfortable in their own skin. You envy their ease. Good. Now do the work of becoming comfortable in yours. You take the envy and you strip it of its resentment. You extract the information. You discard the poison. And you keep only the direction. The direction toward what you could become. That's the Stoic move. That's the alchemy. And it works, but only if you're honest. Only if you stop pretending you don't feel envy. Only if you stop the performance of being above it all. The performance is exhausting. You know this. The energy it takes to maintain the appearance of not caring, while secretly caring so much that it keeps you up at night, that energy is stealing your life. It's stealing your attention. It's stealing your capacity to be present with the people who actually matter to you, in the life you actually have, on the day you're actually living. Let me bring this back to where we started. You wake up and within 60 seconds it starts. The phone. The notifications. The low-grade anxiety. The poisonous tightening. The quiet surrender. But it doesn't have to start. You could wake up and within 60 seconds do something different. You could sit in the silence. You could feel your own breath. You could think about the one thing that matters most today, not in someone else's life, in yours. You could ask yourself, who do I want to be today? Not what do I want to have? Not what do I want to achieve? Who do I want to be? And then you could spend the day being that person. Not perfectly. Not without stumbling. But deliberately. Consciously. With your attention in your own arena, on your own work, in your own life. Envy is what happens when you haven't built your own inner structure of worth. So build it. Build it with discipline. Build it with honesty. Build it with the daily, unglamorous work of coming home to yourself. Of competing with who you were yesterday. Of refusing to let strangers set the terms of your value. The poison will still surface. The tightening will still come. You're human. But you'll recognize it faster. You'll catch it sooner. You'll translate it into information and redirect it into fuel. And over time, not quickly, not dramatically, but over time, the gap will narrow. Not the gap between you and them. The gap between who you are and who you know you could be. That gap. The only one that matters. You stop envying everyone when you start building yourself. That's the thesis. That's the whole thing. Self-respect isn't something you feel. It's something you build through discipline. And when you've built it, when the structure is solid, when the foundation is yours, when the citadel is strong and the gate is closed and you're the one holding the key, other people's lives become interesting, not threatening. Their success becomes their story, not your indictment. Their beauty, their wealth, their ease, all of it becomes simply what is. Not better. Not worse. Just different. Just theirs. And yours becomes yours. Fully. Without apology. Without comparison. Without the constant, corrosive need to measure. You wake up. The phone is there. The notifications are there. The whole machinery of comparison is there, waiting, humming, ready to pull you in. And you look at it and you say, not today. Today I'm in my own arena. Today I'm building. Today I'm competing with who I was yesterday. Today I'm coming home. Stay disciplined.